Britain's greatest defence has been, arguably, that it is an island. The enemy must come to us, and to do so must cross the water or air, places Britain has been notoriously great at operating in. The last real invasion of Britain was of course technically 1066. There was also the Battle of Fishguard in Wales 1797. Revolutionary French forces, led by Colonel William Tate, attempted an invasion of the UK, only for them to get drunk and the invasion failed. That, seemingly, was the last time war came directly to British soil. That is, until technically the First World War. Not through direct invasion or landing of troops this time, but by sea. George V declared war on Germany on the 4th of August 1914 at 11 p.m. With this, Britain joined the First World War, unwittingly bringing war directly to Britain for the first time in nearly 120 years. By September 1914, trench warfare had taken hold, with 400 miles of trenches in November. It was believed by some that the war would be over by Christmas. Little did they know that the war was to become very real in December. This was not the first time the war was brought to England. On the 3rd of November 1914, Admiral Franz von Hipper took the ships SMS Seydlitz, von der Tann, Moltke, Blucher, SMS Strasbourg, Graudenz, Kolberg and Stralsund and used them to attack the British North Sea port and town of Great Yarmouth. They wanted to shell the town and lay mines off the coast. Only the beach was really shelled. The submarine HMS D5 was struck by a mine as HMS Halcyon, Lively, Leopard, along with submarines D3 and E10 chased off the German ships laying mines. The D5 was sunk by a mine at 8:30 a.m. 5 survived, but 21 lost their lives. The British declared war on Germany owing to their invasion of Belgium as part of the Schlieffen Plan. Alfred von Schlieffen, whom the plan was named after, was a German field marshal and strategist. This plan involved storming France first, overwhelming them, and then attacking Russia. To do this, Germany would attack France from both the top and the bottom as a way to avoid a head-on confrontation. In order to achieve this plan, it had to go through Belgium to get to where they needed to go. Belgium and the UK signed a treaty in 1839, the Treaty of London, which guaranteed Belgian independence and neutrality. As a result of Germany violating this, Britain declared war on them. One of the first naval engagements of the First World War was the Battle of Helgoland Bight, a bay of an archipelago of Germany in the North Sea. On the 28th of August 1914, the British and German navies clashed, with a decisive victory for Britain, as they lost 35 lives compared to around 1,000 killed or captured Germans. Despite this, German U-boats first struck on the 5th of September, with the SM U-21 sinking the HMS Pathfinder off the coast of St Abbs Head, Berwickshire, Scotland. 259 men lost their lives. Britain had already begun a naval blockade of Germany in August in an attempt to cut off supplies. Britain and Germany had a naval race, won overwhelmingly by Britain, who had the two-power standard, as in the Royal Navy had to be the size of the next two largest navies. Britain had 29 dreadnoughts compared to Germany's 17. The naval aspect of the First World War is often forgotten about in the West. By December 1914, people had become fatigued of the war. There had been hundreds of thousands of casualties across both sides by this point, and people at home had started to see the effects of war as wounded soldiers were brought home. The feeling that the war would be over by Christmas had deteriorated. The ambitions of bombing north-east England could have had many reasons. It could have been that the Germans wanted to humiliate or even gradually destroy parts of the Royal Navy. It could have been to destroy key strategic places in England while destroying morale. It could have simply been because it was close enough to strike from Germany. The raid on Yarmouth proved that a raid on the English coast was possible. An earlier reconnaissance mission undertaken by the U-boat U-17 found that Scarborough and Hartlepool had little to no coastal defences, which was another factor why these two specific places were chosen. Plus, it was believed two of their warships, HMS Inflexible and HMS Invincible, were in America being repaired after their involvement in the Battle of the Falkland Islands. Named as Britain's first seaside resort, Scarborough was originally called Skarðaborg, named after Thorgils Skarði, a Viking, and Old Norse word borg, meaning fortified town. Although Scarborough saw some shipbuilding take place in the 19th century, it was mainly known for its fishing. Fishing had been prominent since the medieval period, although shipping was an important part of the economy thanks to the development of the coal industry, meaning Scarborough shipping was used in the 1600s to transport this coal. It then developed as a spa town in this century as well. The whole bombardment of the north-east coast nearly never happened. At 3 a.m. on the 15th of December, Admiral Hipper left the Jade Bight. He commanded 9 cruisers and 18 destroyers, utilising many of the same ships that undertook the raid on Yarmouth. There were also 85 ships positioned near Dogger Bank, a sandbank about 62 miles off the coast of England in the North Sea. These ships were positioned just in case Hipper's fleet came under attack. Hipper's trip across the North Sea was nearly spotted. The SMS S-33, a torpedo boat, broke radio silence using wireless communication after it became lost and asked for directions. It then headed back to Germany. They were then noticed by 4 British destroyers who reported their position. Hipper was worried the British knew about their planned raid. Then, owing to bad weather at 6:35 a.m. on the 16th of December, the 18 destroyers and SMS Strasbourg, Graudenz and Stralsund headed back to Germany. The SMS von der Tann, the first German Imperial Navy battlecruiser and fastest dreadnought at the time, and the SMS Derfflinger headed to Scarborough. The raid was about to begin. It was 8 a.m. on the 16th of December 1914. Scarborough, an undefended coastal town in North Yorkshire, was about to be shelled. It was a misty morning, with the town going about their day as usual. No one there suspected an attack, as it was strategically unimportant and quite undefended. A skipper named George Shaw, who was in his steam trawler, the St. Cloud in the South Bay, however, was one of the first to see ships arriving. The 3 German cruisers came from the north and circled around Castle Hill. He thought they were British ships at first, until they raised their German war flags and started firing almost immediately after coming into view of the town. He was fired at, but managed to make it into the harbour untouched. The town, however, was not to enjoy the same fate. One of the main targets of the raid was the castle. The ships sailed from the north-east into South Bay to see if there was any danger from Castle Hill. It is believed that they thought there might be defences in the castle and wanted to target those first. Once they realised this was not the case, at 8 a.m. they begun firing on the town, with the castle being hit despite them not deeming it a threat. There had been a castle here since the mid-1100s, built here by the Normans thanks to its key strategic position. This position has been fortified since the Neolithic period. In 1159, Henry II started to rebuild the castle and the town. Building took place between 1159, starting with the Great Tower, with building at different times throughout its life until 1348, except for a barracks in 1745-6. It was used as a prison from the 1650s, and in 1645, this castle was involved in one of the bloodiest sieges of the English Civil War. The walls of the tower were decimated, and half the building collapsed. The castle was one of the first places hit in the raid. The Coast Guard's shelter was hit, with the policeman named P.C. Hunter along with a Coast Guard on duty in the castle. They went to summon the guard upon the first shots being fired. Just moments after leaving, a shell hit their shelter, blasting it to pieces. They then took refuge on the steps leading up to the castle. The castle's great tower and south-facing walls were hit, and the barracks from the 1700s were destroyed. The ships carried on bombarding the town. Where we see life and tourism and peace today, in the early morning of the 16th of December there was death, smoke and terror. Shells blitzed the coast from 8 a.m. until 8:30. They stopped firing, turned in the South Bay, and then continued shooting at the town. It is believed their main target may have been the wireless telegraphy station on Urton Moor. It was built in 1912 and was used from 1914 and throughout the First World War to monitor the German High Seas Fleet. It was not hit, however. That fate belonged to the civilian areas. Other areas included the Grand Hotel. Designed by Hull architect Cuthbert Broderick, it was the largest European hotel and brick-built structure when it opened in 1867. It is designed to represent time, with 4 towers representing the seasons and the 52 chimneys for the weeks. It is believed that the restaurant was the worst hit part, although around 30 shells hit the hotel in total. Inside the hotel, debris landed in the rooms, and it allegedly felt like there was glass falling absolutely everywhere to those inside. Residents and the servants took shelter in the cellar. Ultimately, however, the Grand Hotel survived. Other places included another hotel, the Balmoral Hotel. Opened by the 1890s, one shell went through the hotel, while another landed in a cistern but did not explode. The hotel closed in 1973 and is now a shopping centre. Another hotel included the Royal Hotel, which opened in the 1830s and had a corner damaged by a shell. Then, on Foreshore Road, the Grand Picture House was also hit. Originally the Grand Skating Rink, this was only opened as a picture house in the summer of 1914. It was repaired and reopened in 1919, but ultimately closed in 1947. Other places hit included the Savings Banks, which opened on King Street in 1818. A portion of the Cliff tramways were destroyed, and there were also churches included All Saints Church, St Mary's and St Martin's. St Martin's was built between 1862 and 3. It was designed by architect George Frederick Bodley and had stained glass completed by Morrison Company. The raid hit the church just as communion was being held. Reverend Charles McCarnes carried on with the service, and the marriage between Richard Horsley and Winifred Dupoit carried on as planned later that day. Many houses and businesses were struck by shells, however, including a grocer's on Prospect Road, meaning that a lot of livelihoods were lost, and lives, of course, too. There were some gruesome deaths, including that of the postman, who allegedly had his head blown clean off. 18 people lost their lives that morning, with the youngest being a 14-month-old called John Riles. In just 30 minutes, over 500 high-explosive shells indiscriminately hit all walks of life in the town, mainly just to spread panic and fear. People crowded into the railway station to escape the shells, and that was not even the end of it. The Derflinger and the Von der Tann were the ones who attacked Scarborough, and after 8:30 made their way to Whitby. Meanwhile, Hartlepool was still under attack. At 8:10 a.m, the ships Seydlitz, Blucher and Moltke began firing upon Hartlepool. Originally two places, Old Hartlepool, known as Headland, was a fishing village formed in the 600s around Hartlepool Abbey. West Hartlepool was formed after West Hartlepool Dock was opened in 1837. It amalgamated with Old Hartlepool in 1967 to become just Hartlepool. It has a long-standing history of shipping and fishing that made up a big part of its heritage and economy. The word Hartlepool gets its name from hart, referring to stags or deer, and pool, obviously referring to water. Hartlepool was by far the worst place hit of the areas bombarded, in terms of casualties anyway. Hartlepool was also a more significant target as it had docks, factories and 2 defensive batteries. Over 1,100 shells hit Hartlepool, killing 130 people and injuring hundreds more. The gun crews of the batteries were warned at 4:30 a.m. of a potential attack, and thus were given live ammunition. At 7:46 they were warned of large ships being spotted. Of course, the attack then begun at 8:10. There were actually 4 British ships on patrol: HMS Doon, Test, Waveney and Moy. Doon spotted Seydlitz, Blucher and Moltke at 7:45. Doon opened fire, but the only weapon it had that could affect the 3 German ships were torpedoes. It moved into fire, missed, and then returned. The ships then approached to begin their attack on Hartlepool. They attacked the batteries first, so they were attacking the defences. The 2 guns at the Hugh Battery were unsure about the approaching ships until they attacked. They found that the short distance between the ships and the guns, along with the armour of the ships, meant that their shots were ineffective. This was exacerbated by poor visibility. They did find success, however, in attacking the masts and rigging. Ultimately, 9 soldiers lost their lives at the battery, along with 7 sailors. This became the first and only UK battlefield of the First World War, an infamous accolade for the battery which is now a museum. This area was by far the worst part of Hartlepool hit by the raid. The battery, built in 1860, only saw action firing at the German attackers. As their main objective was attacking the defensive positions, the headland here, where the Hugh Battery is situated, suffered the worst, although most houses were hit, even those in West Hartlepool. This battery was also the site of the first soldier killed by the enemy on British soil in the First World War. His name was Private Theo Jones, a former head teacher who was 27 years old. Other places hit include Moor Terrace, Cliff Terrace, Victoria Place, and also Headland Baptist Church. This church was built in 1850 and rebuilt on the original site following the damage from the raid. The raid on Hartlepool lasted 40 minutes. Meanwhile, just after 9 a.m, the two ships Derflinger and Bon de Tan had turned their attention to Whitby. Whitby's Anglo-Saxon name was Strionshall, meaning Lighthouse Bay, although Whitby comes from the Old Norse words for white and farmstead. There was evidence of Roman settlement here, but it is the abbey upon which the town we know and love was founded. The abbey dates to 656 AD and was later a Benedictine monastery after the Norman invasion, with stone buildings replacing the wooden ones after 1100. Some of the other historic sites include the 199 steps recorded from 1730 and made of wood until the 1770s. There is also St Mary's Church, founded in 1110, with the interior dating to the late 1700s. Whitby was, of course, the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula, who arrived in 1890 and found inspiration from the abbey amongst other things. On the morning of the 16th of December 1914, between 9 and 9:30 a.m, around 150 shells were launched at Whitby. The abbey was hit by 3 12-inch shells and the west front suffered direct damage. The two ships first fired at the signalling station on the east cliff. The third shot fired killed Coast Guard Frederick Randall, who lived in one of the Admiralty cottages. He had just stepped outside his cottage when the shell hit close to where he was standing and allegedly blew his head clean off. There were a total of 3 people killed in the attack, with more injured and left homeless. At 9:30 a.m, all attacking forces reconvened and started to head back to safety. This is where the Grand Fleet, the main battle fleet of the Royal Navy, formed in August 1914, nearly got them on their return trip. For a start, the Germans had the advantage of being able to concentrate the attacks of their high seas fleet, whereas the British had to have their forces spread out across the North Sea, always on patrol. Admiral Friedrich von Ingenholl took 85 ships near the Dogger Bank, which was the entirety of the high seas fleet, where he would wait as support for Hipper in case of attack. Meanwhile, British intelligence had actually had indication of a raid. Room 40, which was situated in Whitehall and responsible for analysing information systems for the British Admiralty, had broken German naval codes and on the 14th of December were made aware of an incoming raid. The only issue being that they did not know where the raid might be taking place. Therefore, Admiral John Jellicoe, who was commanding the Grand Fleet at Scapa Flow, planned for 64 ships to convene 25 miles southeast of the Dogger Bank. Their plan was to let the Germans attack, then ambush them upon their return. Unfortunately, bad signalling and bad weather meant the Germans escaped. The humiliation of the Navy not capturing the attacking ships, however, was dampened by the propaganda drive the attack afforded Britain. This was seen both nationally and internationally as an attack on civilians miles away from conflict on mainly undefended territory too, and thus gave the UK a push for revenge. The Germans were labelled baby killers, the phrase "Remember Scarborough" appeared in propaganda, men began enlisting in high numbers, and even neutral USA decried the attack. After all, they had killed a baby. The country was reeling. It was outraged. They learned from the mistakes, ordering that captains should double-check any orders to disengage should they be in an advantageous situation. The damage of this attack, and indeed damage to mainland Britain during the war, was not at an end. Flamborough Head is famous throughout the country for having the oldest surviving complete lighthouse in England, built in 1669. It also has another lighthouse which was built in 1806. The chalk is millions of years old, with evidence of Bronze Age settlement. The name is thought to mean Flane's Fortress, with Flane potentially being the brother of the founder of Scarborough. At 8:15 a.m. on the 16th of December, while the other ships were bombarding the English coast, the Kolberg began laying mines, with the victims being minesweepers. These effects were not felt until later on, however, as from the 19th until the 31st of December, minesweeping operations were undertaken. In total, including an event on the 6th of January 1915, the Oriander, the Garmo, the Nighthawk and the Banyas were sunk by mines laid by Kolberg, with 15 men losing their lives. This was not the last time that the war came to North East England, but there was one time that saw no loss of life. 20 miles north of Scarborough, on the 24th-25th of September 1916, 19 trawlers, 11 of which were from Scarborough, went fishing, when the German U-boat U-57 surfaced. Although they sunk all the trawlers, bringing devastation to the fishing industry, they actually showed some mercy. They allowed the 126 men to evacuate, as there was an order to sink any British registered ship, although there was less of an effort to hurt or kill those working the boats. Ultimately, they stopped a neutral Norwegian steamer, put the fishermen on board, and then landed them all at South Shields the morning after. The UK also saw Zeppelin raids bring death to England directly. On the 19th of January 1915, bombs were dropped on Yarmouth and other east coastal towns. Throughout the war, 52 Zeppelin raids saw 556 people killed on English soil. Scarborough was also bombed around 20 times through the Second World War as well, as part of the Blitz campaign. The worst air raid took place on the 18th of March 1941, where 98 German planes bombed the town around 9 p.m, killing 28 people. Ultimately, although Scarborough, Whitby and Hartlepool all suffered greatly, it is seen that actually the British people used this to their propaganda advantage, and the town today of Scarborough, as well as Whitby and Hartlepool, show no signs, but the memories of those who were killed in this attack will be remembered for a long time.